Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I'll call to order this hearing of February 29, 2024 in the matter of case file Z0329-23-C. My name is Joe Turner. I am the county's hearings officer. My role as the hearings officer is to conduct decisions about certain land use matters in Clackamas County. In making those decisions, I'm required to apply the county's existing laws. I'm not a policymaker. I don't have the authority to vary from or change the laws. If you think that the laws need to be changed, you can work with commissioners to do that. But state law requires that this application be judged based on the laws in effect when the application was filed. As a hearings officer, I'm to provide I am unbiased with regard to this application. I have not had any pre-hearing contact with any of the parties regarding the substance of the application, and I don't have any interest in the subject property or any of the surrounding properties. But you have the right to challenge my impartiality, to argue that I'm biased in one way or another, and you can do that when it's your opportunity to testify. Procedure will follow. I'll start by asking staff to summarize their staff report, copies of which are available on the county's website. The applicant will have an opportunity to present their proposal and respond to the staff report. And if anybody else wants to testify in support of the application, they may do so. And then anyone who wants to testify in opposition or with questions or concerns. That should cover everybody who wants to say something about this application. You'll fall into one of those categories. Once everyone's had an initial opportunity to testify, I will close the hearing for the public. I will give the applicant and staff alone an opportunity to respond to the testimony that was offered. If those responses include new evidence, I will reopen the hearing for the public and allow them to respond to the new evidence. Otherwise, I'll close the hearing and announce what I'm going to do. It is important. Generally, I will issue a written decision within about 2 weeks after the close of the record. I'll send my decision to the county. County will send it to parties of record. So anybody who's testified orally or in writing before the close of the record will be sure and receive a copy of my decision when it's issued. If you decide not to testify but still want to receive a copy of my decision, you can contact staff and ask to be put on the mailing list for that purpose. Anyone with an interest in this application may offer relevant oral or written testimony. The testimony should be relevant to the applicable approval criteria, which are set out on the staff report. However, it's also important that all parties make their best case to me. My decisions are final for purposes of the county and may be appealed to the Land Use Board of Appeals, or LUBA. LUBA generally will not allow new testimony and evidence on appeal. They'll decide any appeal based on the record before me. So if you feel it's important that myself or any future decision maker knows something about this application, you need to make sure it gets into the record before me. In order to preserve your right to appeal, you or someone expressly representing you must testify orally or in writing before the close of the record. And in order to raise an issue on appeal, someone must have raised that issue before me. If anyone feels they need more time to prepare, you can ask me to hold the record open or continue the hearing. If I hold the record open, you'll have the opportunity to submit additional written testimony and evidence before I make a decision. If I continue the hearing, we can come back and do this again at a later date. But whether or not the hearing is continued or the record is held open for any other purpose, state law requires that I hold the record open for an additional week for the applicant alone to submit a final written argument without any new evidence. The applicant can waive that right if they choose, but if anybody else wants me to hold the record open or continue the hearing for any other purpose, you must make that request before the close of the hearing today. When you testify, please begin by stating your name and your full mailing address. Please spell your last name so I get it right. And if you represent someone else, please say so. Finally, as I noted, testimony should be relevant to the approval criteria in the staff report. And please don't repeat testimony offered by yourself or earlier witnesses. Repeating your testimony doesn't make your case any stronger. The only issue before me is whether the application does or does not comply with the approval criteria. Whether everybody loves it or everybody hates it is not an issue I get to consider. But that concludes my introduction. I'll ask staff to summarize the Zoom. And then proceed to their staff report.
Thank you. This public hearing will be conducted virtually using the Zoom platform. Panelists for today's hearing, which include the hearings officer, county staff, and the applicant, have both audio and video capability. Audience members who have joined the meeting will have their mics muted unless they wish to testify, in which case they will be called upon to do so by the county staff moderator. Audience members' video will not be turned on at any time. Today's hearing is being recorded as required by law. The county will make every effort to post the recording on the county website later today. There is a designated time during the hearing when it will be open for testimony. The hearings officer will make it clear when this is. If you want to provide testimony, you will utilize the raise hand feature. For attendees on PC and iPad, you have a raise hand button on the Zoom bar, either at the top or bottom of your screen, depending on your device. When the moderator switches you over to provide your testimony, your screen will look different for a little while. Primarily, you will see all participants' cameras, not just the one who's speaking. Staff will call upon you when it is time for you to provide your testimony. Be sure to provide your name and mailing address when you begin. Once you've provided your testimony, your microphone will be muted and your screen will be returned to normal. If the record is left open at the end of this hearing and you wish to submit additional written testimony, you can email your written testimony to me at mlord@clackamas.us, or you can mail it to Clackamas County's Planning and Zoning Division at 150 Beaver Creek Road, Oregon City, 97045. The staff contact email, my email address, is also available on the webpage where you found today's Zoom hearing. Testimony must be received by 4 p.m. on the day the record closes. People who testify and provide their mailing address will receive a copy of the hearings officer's written decision. If you do not wish to testify but would like to receive a copy of the decision, you must provide your email or standard mailing address, again to myself by email at mlord@clackamas.us, or by entering it into the Zoom chat function during the hearing. And so with that, I did prepare a PowerPoint presentation for today, so I will go ahead and share my screen and start. So my name is Melissa Lord. Today I'm speaking on behalf of the Planning and Zoning Division as it relates to land use application file Z0329-23, which is a conditional use permit. The subject property is located on Thomas Road, just outside of Sandy, where Lusted Road and Thomas Road intersect. The property itself is about 21 acres in size, and it's located within the Exclusive Farm Use Zoning District, or EFU. The applicants are requesting to operate a home occupation to host events. Events would include things like weddings, family reunions, corporate events, things of that nature. They're requesting to have up to 40 events per year with an average attendance of 75 people per event and a maximum event capacity of up to 200 people. The events will take place primarily in either an existing barn or the existing dwelling. As I'll describe in my presentation and as is written in my staff report, staff recommends that we approve this application subject to conditions. This is a quick overview of the site plan that was provided with the applicant's submitted application materials. On the left-hand side of our screen, we've got just the overall site, but to the right-hand side of our screen, we've zoomed in onto one portion of the site plan, just to highlight a few key aspects to the site. So you can see the event barn and the dwelling or the home that's on the property. Those two buildings are already existing, as is the gravel driveway. They've got a couple of parking areas that will be located on grass predominantly. Those are shown here on the site plan as well. And then a ceremony site. This would be for example, a wedding ceremony taking place outdoors, while, as I'll discuss further, the predominant wedding events. So things like the reception or the dancing would take place within either the barn or the dwelling. Staff reviewed all relevant zoning and development ordinance criteria. All those sections are listed here on the screen. I won't go into detail on every one of those sections, but in my staff report, which was entered into the record as exhibit number 1, you can find a detailed response to each of those review criteria. I'll note here that home occupations to host events are a conditional use permit in the exclusive farm use zone, which is why we're reviewing this land use application today. The zoning and development ordinance section 1203 outlines the review criteria or the standards for conditional uses. One of those is that the characteristics of the subject property need to be suitable for the proposed use. When we look at characteristics of the subject property, we can look at things like the shape, the size, topography, the existing improvements on site to make this determination. Dwellings on nearby properties are about 1,200 feet away from the event venue location. There's existing trees, there's a bluff, and the physical distance separating the proposed event area to the surrounding properties, or to the structures on surrounding properties especially, add visual and physical barriers to help create that separation from the event space. The existing barn and the dwelling will be used for events. There's no new buildings that are required to be constructed on this property in order to host events or in order to establish the proposed use. And the existing driveway that will that serves the site now will continue to serve the site as an event venue. So there's no new access to the roadway that's required for this. So for those reasons, generally, we found that the standard was being met. The conditional use application needs to be consistent with subsection 1007.07 of our zoning and development ordinance, which speaks to the safety of the transportation system. We need to make sure that the transportation system is adequate to serve this proposed use. So the Clackamas County Engineering Division did review the application. I submitted a copy of their review comments into the record as exhibit number 7. They found that the existing right-of-way and roadway are adequate to support the annual number of vehicle trips that would be generated by this event use. The Clackamas Fire District, also reviewed and approved their emergency vehicle access plan as well. And there is a site distance requirement of 610 feet to ensure safety of entering the roadway from the subject property, and it was determined that meeting this site distance requirement is feasible. And so as conditioned, we also found that this standard can be met. Next, one of the review criteria is that the conditional use permit will not alter the character of the surrounding area in a manner that would substantially limit, impair, or preclude the use of surrounding properties for the primary uses that are allowed in the zoning districts on the subject property or in the surrounding area. So the subject property, as I mentioned, is in the exclusive farm use zone. Properties in the surrounding area are also in exclusive farm use, and as well as the timber zoning district. Very generally, the primary uses of the EFU and timber zoning district include farming, forestry, and we're also required to look at any existing dwellings when we do this analysis. Staff considered impacts such as traffic, noise, dust, debris on roadways, as well as the visual impacts of the potential visual impacts of the event venue when considering whether or not the application complied or could comply with this criteria. And when considering all those factors, we did find that this standard was being met. The zoning and development ordinance section 806, it lists all of the review criteria relevant to home occupations to host events, which is what this application is. We found that the standard, or all of the standards in this section either were being complied with or could be complied with conditions. So at a very high level, the event operators do live full-time in the dwelling on site. Events would occur substantially either in an existing barn or the dwelling. And so I mentioned earlier that there was the ceremony site, which would be outdoors. But when you look at the totality of the events taking place, they will be substantially in the barn or in the dwelling. The applicants provided a noise study that clearly demonstrates that they can in fact comply with the noise limitations set forth in section 806. They are providing up to 77 parking spaces for vehicles. Most of them will be on grass. Some of them will be, very few of them will be gravel, and even fewer will be paved to comply with the ADA requirements. And then lastly, on non-event days, any furniture, equipment, things of that nature that are associated with the events will be stored either in the barn or in the dwelling. So there won't be any visual impacts or evidence of the events taking place outside of event days. As of right now, let's see. So the notice of this hearing actually initially went out on January 3rd, advertising a February 8th hearing. The applicant did request to postpone the hearing to today. So on February 5th, we sent out a new notice advertising today's hearing date. As of right now, we have not received any comments from the public thus far. We did receive comments from different county and supporting agencies, so the septic department, building department, engineering department all did provide comments to us, and those were added to the record as well. So with that concludes my presentation for today. Just to summarize, we do recommend approval with conditions for this land use application.
Okay, thank you. Just had a couple of questions. On
Yes.
page 5, it talks right there. Section 80602K, sub B says an alternative to the parking surfacing requirement may be approved based on the following criteria. I understand they're proposing an alternative grass surface, but I didn't see any findings that those standards are met, that it's appropriate considering the season, duration, and intensity of the use, surface for hardy grasses, wood chips for others, etc.
Let me take a look and maybe I can get back to you. I do believe that we did evaluate the standards based on that. We evaluated that criteria based on those standards. So the frequency of events and then the number of customers or event attendees that will come to the site. Yeah, would comply with those. So let me get back to you on that.
Okay. And on page 29, there's a comment from Richard Carlson. The Building Codes Division said, talking about restrooms, I'm just not clear. I got to find where my question was. It says the first sentence says the applicant would not need a change of use for the dwelling, but they would need to provide permanent restrooms in the barn. Sorry, that's not it. Hang on, let me look at what did I say? About not occupying a permanent structure.
You cut out slightly, so I'm not sure if there was a question in there, but I think maybe I can shed some light. The septic.
I'll look at my note again and come back to that one. I can't find. It doesn't say what I thought it did, so maybe I just misread it the first time. And then go ahead.
Okay, there's maybe the point of confusion was between the septic comments and the building department comments, perhaps. The septic department and the building department reviewed these independently, and so the septic department provided a comment saying if they're not occupying a permanent structure, then outhouses are fine, I think was the gist of the comment. But if they are, then they'll need a permit. Which then if you read the building department comments, they said, yeah, you're in a permanent structure, you're gonna need some permanent restrooms.
Okay.
So works in a little bit of a circle. I think that hopefully will help.
Okay, I think that was it. It's on Exhibit 6, that the language I was looking for. You just resolved my question. Thank you.
Okay.
Well, both of those questions. Okay, that's the only questions I had for staff. Thank you. Is the applicant here or represented?
Yeah. Do I need to raise hand?
No,
No?
just give us your mailing your mailing address is on the application, but get your name.
Okay. My name is Peggy Holyoak, Holyoak, and this is my husband Val and our daughter Alyssa, who lives with us, our 29-year-old daughter. 39800 Southeast Thomas Sandy. So my first comments, and they're relatively brief, but I think it's important that I share for us the purpose and the vision that we have in doing this. We didn't just decide, hey, maybe we ought to launch on an expensive, difficult journey. Also, I'd like to note that our son, Jason Holyoak, who serves currently as a corpsman with a Marine unit stationed in Hawaii, is joining us from there, and I appreciate him being able to be there. He's a very large part of what we're doing. So our purpose and our vision, we are sharing the tranquility and the beauty and the bounty of this little slice of heaven that we've lived on for 2.5 years now. Everyone who visits us comments on how it's so peaceful, how it's just what they needed. Our world needs more of that. And so we really have a desire to share this in good ways with many people. We're sharing the resource of this amazing property as a venue for charities, special needs families, nonprofits for their fundraising. I've served, volunteer as Special Olympics fundraising manager, and other positions that had me working with those needs. And it's in my heart, it's in our hearts for obvious reasons. And we have a great desire to get to the strong financial point where we can make that available on a regular basis, where we can say, you can use this venue at no cost for your fundraising event. We're building strong family relationships. We have 8 children. We have 18 grandchildren and 2 great-grandchildren. And with them, we love having them out here. We build strong, sweet memories, opportunities for them to learn stewardship over the land, to get a strong, sturdy work ethic. And so we love that. I was raised as a city girl, California, so 23 acres of blackberries, etc., and wild animals on the loose, and trees that need attention could be daunting, as well as learning what we need to do from our local government to make our vision happen could be daunting. We're not here for daunting. We really feel like over these 2 years, we've faced each challenge with a desire to learn, to be open, to be cooperative. And we hope that we're setting an example again for those beautiful grandchildren and of what it means to live a good life. So we've made a lot of friends since we moved here. We've met a lot of our neighbors, pretty much all of them who touch or come close to touching on our property, quite a few others. And we realized they were here before we came. And we really respect what's important to them in the quality of their country living. We've also had the opportunity to meet and hire some skilled people who are interested in helping us with this vision and what we can accomplish on our land. And so we feel like more than just the wages of what we put out when we hire someone, or the small business that comes on to vendor for an event. What?
I understand your basis for wanting to do this, but I'd like to focus on the criteria more. So
okay. So I think the criteria were really well addressed in the report. Okay. I honestly don't feel like I have anything to add to that.
Okay.
And we're very open to questions.
Do you have any objections to conditions of approval in the staff report?
No.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. Open it to the public, and then I'll give you a chance to respond to their testimony, but we'll go from there. Thank you. Is there anybody else who'd like to testify in support of this application? If so, please click on the raise your hand button. Have Charles Woodward has their hand raised, and Jason Holyoke. Mr. Woodward, go ahead and unmute yourself. Looks like you are unmuted.
Yes.
There we go.
Pleasure to be here today. I'm the attorney representing the Holyokes in this matter, and I just wanted to make sure, again, as Peggy alluded to, we've looked over the staff report. We don't have any objections.
Can you give us your address for the record, please?
Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. It's 101, excuse me, it's 1165 Pearl Street, Suite 101, and that's in Eugene, Oregon, in 97402.
Thank you.
And I just wanted to let you know, in case there are any questions that come that way about any of the legal standards or anything that might need to be answered, I'm here as a resource for that and to speak to any concerns that might arise in the public. And I'll kind of let things roll from there. That's all I really have.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Woodward. I have to keep going back and forth on screens here. Mr. Woodward, if you'll click on the raise your hand button, we'll go away. We know you've had the chance to speak. Jason Holyoke.
Yes, hi, good afternoon, sir. Yes, Jason Holyoke, mailing address. Any correspondence could be sent to the property address in question, the 39800 address. But yes, I would like to testify in support. I'd be remiss if I did not at least raise my hand and give a 30-second plug here. Val and Peggy Holyoke are my parents. I'm involved with them in their LLC adventure here. And very supportive. They'll be great stewards. They've invested thousands of dollars just in the trees there with an ISA certified arborist, just to keep the trees healthy and things. And if they, can do that for the trees with their limited resources, certainly they're good stewards over everything else that you're willing to put them over here. So I've looked over all of the correspondence and the staff report. And we, agree with everything. There's nothing that we would fight against or resist. So just giving my support, and thank you for your time, everybody that's here today. Thank you, Melissa, Darcy, Charles, of course. Sir.
Is there anybody else who'd like to testify in support of the application? Please raise your hand. Not seeing anybody. Is there anybody who'd like to testify in opposition or with questions or concerns? Does anybody else want to say anything about this application? Okay, Janet Davis. And then Ronald Schneider next. Ms. Davis, it looks like you're unmuted.
Oh, good. I wasn't sure I did that correctly. Great.
That's right.
So my name is Janet Davis, DAVIS. I'm the president of the Bull Run Community Association and CPO, and the Holyoke property is within the Bull Run CPO. I live at 40601 Southeast Kubitz Road, Sandy, which is within a half a mile of the Holyoke property across the river. And I had, a speech written here. And of course, my first point has now been sort of addressed by the noise study, but let me just kind of at least bring that up as an issue, because when we first read this application, it was going to be outdoor events. Mm-hmm. And those were going to be a big problem for the neighbors. I went around to all the people in our area, and that was a real issue for them. Also, the part about how current regulations talk that the peak noise would be between 8 a.m. and 6 p.m., whereas the application that I read said the events would go on until like 10 p.m. at night. And that, for residents here who, in good weather, we want to be outside and we don't really want to listen to events that are happening. Some of us may not like the music or whatever. We wouldn't appreciate that. But I'm assuming that the noise study, now that the main parts of the events have been moved indoors, that will hopefully mitigate that issue. but we will still be paying attention to it. And if there's a problem, we'll be letting the county know. It's funny how this river valley noise echoes and it bounces off the walls of the river, and it goes places you wouldn't normally expect. So I hope the noise study took that into account. The second thing that came up is the CPO board did review this application, and we had some concerns about traffic safety in the area. Now, I don't believe the code addresses it quite this way, but let me talk about it. The topography here is very narrow, steep, winding roads. We don't have any guardrails. We don't have any street lights. It's a very rural, timbered area. And since celebrations, especially like weddings, customarily serve alcohol and possibly other drugs, it is unfortunately likely that there may be some drivers who are driving home on a dark road that they don't know, and they may be impaired. And so we have some concerns that this is an increased risk in traffic safety. And our board doesn't like this. I mean, this is not something we would like to see 70 people coming to a party, going home, and even 1 or 2 people accidentally going off the road. That would not be a good thing at all. So we are requesting that some sort of condition be added to this that addresses that issue. Now, I don't know how you don't serve alcohol at a wedding, but maybe that's possible. So that's basically the testimony that we want. We're not in support of the application, mainly because of that reason, and also possibly because of noise, but it sounds like that's been somewhat mitigated. Thank you.
To 60 decibel at the property. So that is a relatively low noise level, but that's what the standard they comply with. And you're right, moving also should further reduce the impact of the noise, but that's the standard that they have to comply to, 60 decibels at the property lines. So people across the river are quite a bit further away. The noise does decrease with distance, but they will be conditioned to comply with that if it's approved. Just any other raised hands? Yes, Ronald Schneider.
Yes, this is Ronald Schneider, Ronald and Deborah Schneider at 13715 Southeast Lusted Road, that's Sandy, Oregon, 97055. Yeah, and we definitely oppose this event planner and support the Bull Run CEO. And part of that is the tranquility that they talk about. We already see some impact from the youth group across the street on weekends because of their buses and vans. And talking about 70 plus more cars and 200 plus people, we already seen some impact of their Airbnb that they host at the corner of Lusted and Thomas. People going from Thomas straight through Lusted to the driveway. Now, so basically we're their neighbors, and even though they've been here 2 years, we've been here 50 plus. We have never met, they have not reached out. And again, we're a small farm, and that's the whole thing about this community, the tranquility and the wildlife that we want to preserve. So we definitely oppose it. And the
Thanks,
impact,
sir.
like they said, the sound, nobody sat here and hear the sound from we can actually hear it from Bluff Road across to this canyon, through that canyon. It's pretty impressive, the sound carries. We can hear the football games in Sandy. So definitely opposed. That's it.
I'm seeing if there's other raised hand. I'm not seeing any other raised staff. Any response to testimony?
Mr. Turner, you're breaking up. We can hardly hear what you're saying.
Oh,
We lost him.
yeah, we
Oh, dear.
lost him.
I think he's gonna call in.
Okay, so we'll just give it a minute then till he comes back.
Yeah. I'm gonna actually text him the call-in number real quick.
Here he is.
Can you- There, sorry, I came upstairs. I got a stronger signal. Hopefully that will keep us going. I was just saying, Ms. Lord, if you can go ahead, if you have any response or if you want to leave it to the applicant.
I gotcha. No, I will add a couple things here. Earlier, Mr. Turner, you asked about my findings related to section 80602K, which was about the parking surfacing. So I did write in fact, in response to section 1015, why it was appropriate for us to allow the use of hardy grasses. And so just in summary, it was that the frequency of events and the small number of people attending each event, the majority of the parking spaces that are available would seldom be used. And so I think that that's one reason that it's an appropriate use for hardy grasses. In addition to that, reducing the amount of land that we're taking away from being natural, covered in natural grasses is also important to help promote the goals and policies of our comprehensive plan when we look at the agricultural uses and trying to maintain as much agricultural land. So covering all this space up in gravel parking area for the occasional 200-person event, when in reality, the majority of the events will be much smaller, doesn't quite make sense in that case. So I did write that in response to section 1012 rather than section 806. So hopefully that clarifies things for you. And that's all I wanted to add at this point. Thank you.
Thank you. If the applicant or you're going to respond, Ms. Holyoke or.
Yes, Mr. Turner, this is Charles Woodward for the applicant. I just want to touch a moment on the noise concerns that were raised. Obviously, we're very, as Peggy mentioned earlier, Ms. Holyoke mentioned earlier, we're very cognizant about being good neighbors as well as good stewards. Hence, when we actually undertook the noise study, the sound levels, we did measurements from more than was required by code just to be very comprehensive, and those findings are on Exhibit G that's attached to the amended supplemental narrative. And you can see from the actual noise levels, we actually ran it with ambient, did a test from those specific locations at ambient levels, and then also actually set up an amplified speaker both in the barn where the ceremonies and where the dancing, those things would be occurring. And we actually also went ahead and drug it out to where the ceremony site was as well, just in case if there's a little string quartet to play for the promenade or whatnot. But that said, we still put an amplified speaker in that location to be able to do the tests. And we ran tests with the sound from both sources and ambient in all 7 of those locations. And none of the readings actually were above the 50 decibel limit that is for all hours of the day, much less during hours of operation. So we're very cognizant of the concerns about noise, and I believe maybe it's the trees or whatnot, but just the sheer distances that are involved here with the nearest actual dwellings being quite over 1,000 feet away. So I just wanted to point that out so that the people that have concerns can rest assured that we are addressing that, and that we're actually within compliance, and a little bit more so, as a matter of fact. And as far as traffic safety and winding roads, that's certainly a concern all over, and that is not something that not something that is part of the plan at all. We're maintaining all compliance with all the traffic standards and working with engineering to make sure that we're compliant and being the best that we can as far as that's concerned. And then as far as that, unless you have any other questions, that's all I have.
The applicant has the right to have me hold the record open for an additional week, so you can submit a final written argument. Does the applicant want to waive that, or do you want to submit an argument?
I think we can waive that. I don't think we need a final argument. Thank you.
With that, I'm going to close the hearing, close the record rather. Based on the findings, and I understand the neighbors' concerns about noise. As noted, this use is limited to 60 decibels, which is the maximum allowed under the code. If it meets those standards, it has to be approved. And the applicant's noise analysis demonstrates that it's feasible to do that. So I will impose a condition of approval requiring that they comply with that 60 decibel maximum at the property lines, is where it has to be measured. The traffic issue, I understand that too, but these are existing roads. There's no evidence that they are inherently hazardous. Any increase in traffic will potentially result in an proportional increase in potential for crashes. But there's no evidence that this use creates an unusual risk of that. It's just going to be some more traffic during certain periods. I'm not sure if it's in the record for this one, but in most of these this type of application, traffic staff note that I think 200 or 300 person event facility generates roughly the equivalent traffic of 2 single-family dwellings over the course of a year. So although it tends to be concentrated before and after the event, the traffic is not a significant increase overall. I understand the concerns about alcohol use, but it's in the applicant's best interest for liability concerns to monitor that and make sure that people aren't driving while intoxicated when they leave the facility. But that risk exists regardless of this facility. There are other businesses around that serve alcohol. People go out and drink on their own, parks, etc. So there's no evidence that this use is going to result in a significant, disproportionate number of people who are driving intoxicated. So based on the findings in the staff report, this application does or can comply with the applicable approval criteria. So I'm going to approve the application subject to the conditions in the staff report. I'll issue my written decision within a maximum of 2 weeks. I'll send my decision to the county. We will send it to parties of record. So those who've testified will be sure and receive a copy of my decision when it's issued. But that concludes our hearing. Thank you, and appreciate your everyone's patience with my technical difficulties here. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Turner.